All right, thanks everybody for joining us for the City of Courtenay regular council meeting for July 19th. It's 4 p.m. And I'd like to just start by respectfully acknowledging that the land on which we gather is on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation, and want to thank them for that. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with Ministerial Order M192/2020 and the Class Order Mass Gatherings, council meetings will be conducted virtually and live streamed on the City of Courtenay's YouTube channel. And with that, we'll have the adoption of minutes.
Second.
Excellent. That's been moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions to our minutes? Seeing none. Anybody opposed to accepting them? Nobody's opposed, and that passes unanimously. Thanks very much. Any introduction of late items? I don't believe there's anything. And moving on to delegations, we have first Access BC campaign. If somebody would like to move that.
Move receipt.
Yeah. Excellent. And with that, I will pass it over to Access BC campaign.
Perfect. My name is Ruth Hapte. Can you hear me, everyone?
I hear you just fine. Are you going to be sharing your screen at all?
No, I don't need to share my screen. I can just be talking. Thanks, though. I am a resident physician in obstetrics and gynecology. I'm a former pharmacist, and I'm here in my capacity today representing Access BC. Thank you so much for having us here today. I really appreciate the time to speak with you about this important issue. So if we think about contraception, I think based on what I have experienced in my practice, both in pharmacy and in medicine, access to contraception is a basic human right. The WHO has listed contraception as a medicine that should be accessible to everyone. Unintended pregnancies, we know, can derail life plans, can come with very high personal costs, and have higher negative health impacts for both the mom and the baby, and cost our healthcare system a lot of money. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of barriers for people gaining access to prescription contraception. Cost is probably the biggest barrier. Something like an intrauterine device that's hormonal can be almost $400. Using injections or pills can be about $30 a month. And people who are maybe in abusive relationships, who have no control over the money in their household, or people who are teens who maybe don't have income or are covered under their parents' insurance plan, are not guaranteed privacy if they fill under their parents' insurance plan. And then another barrier that I think is especially important for this city council is being in a rural location. So that makes it even more difficult for women to access these services and access maybe skilled providers who are capable of inserting an IUD. So you can just imagine the layers and layers and layers of barriers that we are creating for people. I do still believe that cost is the biggest barrier. And in our current system, there is kind of a hodgepodge of different systems that cover contraception. Fair Pharmacare, everyone is eligible for that in BC, but usually people who are in the working poor, such that they make just enough money that their pharmacare deductible is sufficiently high that if they don't have any other health condition, they won't reach the deductible, but also don't make enough money to be able to afford things like this. So a lot of single mothers fall in this category. And I'd like to share one quick story about a patient that I was involved in very early on in my training here at UBC. I was seeing this patient. She was one day after she had given birth, and she was asking me about the Mirena IUD. So that's the hormonal IUD. It's about $400. It lasts for 5 years. I was talking to her about it, and I said, oh yeah, of course, I'm more than happy to write you a prescription, follow up with your doctor in 6 weeks. They'll be more than happy to insert it for you, bring it to your appointment. And she said, no, that's not the problem. It quickly became apparent that the issue for her was not, obtaining the prescription or finding a provider that was able to insert this device, but really it was cost. She was a single mother. She couldn't afford the $400 cost out of pocket. She had tried basically every other contraceptive that was intolerable. She had a full-time job, but her private health insurance didn't cover it. And how her physician was in the process of trying to navigate some of the compassionate access, no cost programs that are very few and far between when she got pregnant. And so this is just one example of how the healthcare system had failed this person, in my opinion. They ended up obviously being happy with the scenario that came about, but they certainly really wanted their IUD at that point. So what we really want at Access BC is for prescription contraception to be universally available to all residents. There's already kind of a standard for this set in place by Mifegymizo, where a person can go to a pharmacy and it's covered completely in cost, and they just get dispensed it by the pharmacy. I think that would be incredibly helpful for rural communities, because there are usually there's more pharmacies usually than there are physicians' offices in these some rural communities. And telehealth can be done and different things to ensure that women have access to these services, and pharmacies could fill these prescriptions and allow women to have access to these products. And we know that systems like this save money. So in 2015, the Canadian Medical Association Journal estimated that to deliver a plan for universal prescription contraception, it would cost about 157 million. But savings from these, both from direct medical costs of unintended pregnancies, or about 320 million. And study after study after study has proven this. When you provide prescription contraception at no cost, and more so if you provide the long-acting reversible contraception, like the intrauterine devices and the prescription, the contraceptive implant in the arm, unintended pregnancy rates fall, abortion rates fall, and the government saves money. And in a healthcare system where prescription contraception isn't covered, but the sequelae, so people getting pregnant or people having, people getting pregnant and continuing on their pregnancy, or having a miscarriage or having an ectopic pregnancy, all of those services are covered by MSP. So really, we're doing ourselves a bit of a disservice, and not allowing women and people with uteruses to be able to experience and reach their reproductive health goals. So this is a policy that empowers people. It's one that promotes equality. It's one that promotes health outcomes, and it saves our government money. There's a lot of different medical organizations who have endorsed similar things to this. So Canadian Medical Association, SOGC, which is the basic body for obstetrics and gynecology in Canada, and then as well the Canadian Pediatric Society. I personally have spoken to Vancouver, the Vancouver City Council about a year ago. I live in Vancouver, and we have adopted it in Vancouver. Victoria has adopted it, and so we are going around as a campaign, campaigning to different city councils and hoping that other people are on board with this plan. And so that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions though.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Ruth, for your presentation today. And I'll look to see if there are any questions. And Councillor Frisch, obviously you can raise your hand virtually as you need. I mean, one of the topics you mentioned, and kind of interestingly, when you talked about this being dispensed sort of primarily through the pharmacies, I do know right now one of the conversations that's being had is the lack of even GPs for people. So not everybody even has a GP. So whether it's rural or urban, that's a big issue. So I see that actually having a pretty positive effect all the way around. Just that one concept in and of itself. And with that, I don't see any questions or comments coming. So I just want to thank you very much for your presentation today. And you can hang out for the rest of it. And with that, I'll just ask council if anybody is opposed to receiving the receipt, and nobody is opposed to it. So that is received unanimously. All right. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you, everyone.
And next, we have Comox Valley Nature with Bill Henderson, I believe.
Move receipt.
Second.
All right, and with that, I will pass it over to Bill. And you'll just have to unmute yourself, I think, Bill.
Thank you.
You'll probably, you sound a lot better now. Thanks very much.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and council members may recall receiving as correspondence the Comox Valley Nature Pilot Project proposal on May 6th for a shared cost project partnership with the city and CVN for a Vanier Forest Oaks Restoration Project and use of the Vanier Nature Park by CVN for environmental educational stewardship program. This was intended to be submitted as an actionable agenda item for council's review to proceed and be included in the city's 2022 budget. CAO Geoff Garbutt elected to have this council submission forwarded as correspondence only with no follow-up direction solicited. Thus, no response from councillors resulted, and the CVN's pilot project partnership proposal went into limbo. June 3rd, we asked Mr. Garbutt to please redirect this partnership project back to City Council as an actionable agenda item. Mr. Garbutt, June 4th, replied by email providing his reasoning for declining to do so. Mr. Garbutt characterized the project as premature and not in line with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan review process. In his view, this project proposal was too complex, too costly, and demanded too much time of staff resources for incorporation into the city's 2022 budget. On July 4th, Mayor Wells phoned and suggested that CVN consider making a delegation presentation to council to explain the reasoning for this project proposal and why it should be supported by council. By bringing this project proposal to council before you, this delegation seeks to explain the background and reasoning for this project proceeding with council's support. This project is not premature, nor is it in conflict with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It complements the master plan process with an urgently needed low-cost solution to saving the endangered Garry Oaks of Vanier Nature Park. It is not overly costly, nor too complex, nor too demanding of city staff resources to be implemented in 22. As we explained to Mr. Garbutt in 2 subsequent emails, this CVN project involved considerable consultation with the city parks management and staff in 2020 and 2021. It proceeded to City Council with the support and express direction from the Parks and Public Works Services Director Kyle Shaw and interim CAO Trevor Kirshner for incorporation into the city's 2022 budget, subject, of course, to council support. Far from being premature or out of step, the restoration of the main Garry Oaks Grove in Vanier Nature Park is urgently needed. The project is consistent with the statement in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for preservation of the Garry Oaks. The remaining stock of these rare wetland Garry Oaks has been reduced by approximately 20% between 2016 and 2020, and the pace of loss is accelerating due to aggressive invasive overgrowth and the lack of environmental management. To resolve this impasse with Mr. Garbutt, we have suggested project components of the project that could proceed at the administration level without requiring council's approval. We asked why the administration cannot permit continued use of Vanier Nature Park, as in the past, for environmental educational purposes, such as students' field trips, biological species mapping, and analysis. Vanier Nature Park was created to serve as an outdoor natural sciences laboratory for students and to conserve and protect the Garry Oaks and the Toey Creek headwaters wetlands. Environmental education is cited amongst the environmental benefits of nature parks in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We also asked Mr. Garbutt why this administration cannot allow CVN to undertake removal of invasive species from Vanier Nature Park as previously permitted. We posed these questions to Mr. Garbutt and received no response. We request City Council ask the administration to change its policy back to the former cooperative process, permitting Vanier Nature Park to be used as for educational activities without requiring specific council approval, and to support removal of invasive species by volunteer or environmental organizations, again, without requiring specific council approval.
And I'll just a little bit more about the Environmental Education Stewardship Program, which would be a partnership between Comox Valley Nature and school district staff to deliver environmental education programming to secondary school students. This educational component of the project doesn't require any financial or staff resources from the city, but only the approval to use and access Vanier Nature Park as an outdoor environmental education site for students. So over the 3 years, the plan is to have grant funds and educator resources shared between Comox Valley Nature and ST71. And education staff and volunteers would supervise hands-on activities in the park with students. These activities would include GPS mapping, local species identification and assessment, and environmental stewardship techniques. The students wouldn't participate in or be on site for any of the Garry Oak restoration components of this project, which would include arborist work and the culling, pruning, or falling of large trees. So more details of the education components can be found in the previously provided report, and I'll pass it along to Karen.
Hi, thank you very much, Lindsay. Can everyone see me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Is there any way I can share my screen?
Yeah, I can give you that. You're getting pretty close.
Thanks.
3 minutes, but give me 1 second.
Oh, well, we could just carry on if you don't want to try and.
You should be able to share it right now. It was already set up. If you want.
No, there's actually no option to share the screen. I thought it was going to pop up right at the beginning, but it didn't. So anyway, I'll just carry on because I think what we're saying pretty much does say it all. So what I'm going to explain a little bit more of is the Garry Oaks restoration component of the project. And just I would reiterate right at the beginning that the restoration focus is on the main Garry Oak Grove in the northeast corner of Vanier Nature Park. And our pilot project has been reviewed with Public Works Services and the City Parks Department, and does seem to be in line with the City Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as well as past partnership agreements that with environmental steward groups like Comox Valley Nature. So the project is urgently needed to restore that endangered wetlands Garry Oak Grove before the long-term environmental parks management plan for Vanier Park is finally complete. And it does require immediate restoration if the grove is to survive. The scope of the work does involve removal of invasive species and selective pruning and crowning reduction of the Douglas firs that are shading the Garry Oak Grove. The restoration methodology was collaboratively developed with leading biologists and arborists. And the scope of the work and the methodology has been vetted by City Parks Department, arborists, and the management staff. So we request that City Council refer the proposed partnership costing for the Garry Oaks restoration component of this project to the City Administration for work plan assessment, costing, and staff resource allocation in the 2022 budget. But in our estimation, the city's 50% share of the tree pruning cost is $1,300 a year, with approximately $150 a year for Garry Oak sapling planting, plus incidental costs of $500 for mapping, tree tagging, and water table conservation assessment The total cost to the city over the 3 years is $5,100. Comox Valley Nature will volunteer all the labor resources for invasive plant removal and 50% of the tree pruning costs. So CVN would also be contributing $1,300 a year. The Parks Department is also requested to allocate truck service for invasive plant species disposal twice a year and assign the city arborist to annually monitor the progress of the Gary Oaks restoration. Therefore, we think Parks Department allocated staff should be manageable within the current staff resources.
Yeah, now you're at the 10-minute mark for the presentation. So are you pretty close to finishing up?
I think Bill had one little addition.
That's correct. Yes, if I could just take a moment more of your time, Mayor Wells, just to talk about the anticipated park boundary changes. I believe that council is now aware that a significant boundary change to Vanier Nature Park is anticipated that should be incorporated into the city's work plan for 2022. These changes are not part of the proposed partnership project request, but will redefine the park's westerly and southerly boundaries and incorporate additional wetlands into the Vanier Park Nature Park. Undertaking a future parks management plan for Vanier Park cannot begin while the park's boundary and area are undetermined. Redefining the park boundaries with SD 71 will extend well into 2022, and drafting a future parks management plan will require a further year. Delaying the Gary Oaks restoration 2 years or more will be devastating to the survival of the remaining Gary Oaks. The CVN pilot project is an urgently required priority that must proceed in 2022 to save the remaining trees. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thanks, Bill and Lindsay and Karen for your presentation. And I'll open up to council members if anybody had any questions or comments. And I see Councillor Frisch has raised his hand, so maybe I'll let him go first.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And no rush, but I'm happy to go first. Yeah, thanks, Bill, Lindsay, and Karen. And I just wanted to shed a bit of light from my perspective. It sounds like you guys have a really great project here. And it sounds like you were in some sort of process with the city to see that through. But what I've noticed is that it's kind of come to me as a surprise. And while that's not a problem, of course, with the limited resources of cities, it seems to be a problem at this point. And I don't know if COVID's highly affected that or something else, but I'm wondering from your perspective, did you think that this would sort of just be supported by staff and then staff would brief council on it at some point? Was that the original intention?
Yes, that is generally correct. We received strong support from the staff at PWS and Parks Department. And despite the fact that this support was continuing through the COVID pandemic, we truly believed that with PWS's direction and the interim CIO's direction, that this would receive a favorable response by City Council. I think what's occurred really here is an attempt to redirect it into being subordinate to the Parks Master Plan review process in the fall of 2022. The problem with that is nothing to do with COVID at all. It has to do with the fact that that procedure, if that's the route that we go, will then delay the implementation of the restoration of the Gary Oaks for at least 2 years. By that point, we will have lost an even increasing percentage of the Gary Oaks. Right now, counting from the original count in 2006 to 2020, we've lost 30% of the wetland Gary oaks in this grove. If we wait another 2 years or more, we will lose certainly another 20%, if not more. There comes a point after waiting for a Parks and Recreation Master Plan to come up with an environmental management plan for Vanier Nature Park. We've waited 8 years now for this, that we really are at a point where we really have to do something to save the Gary Oaks. We can't wait forever.
Yeah, I guess I'm not arguing that it sounds like it's an important project. I guess I'm just wondering why I haven't necessarily heard about it, or there hasn't been a presentation in the past about the proposed project, and maybe more when it was in its infancy rather than at this point.
Correct, yes. We've attempted to work through the city administration at all times. We don't like going over the head of the administration to appeal directly to city council. And we've had very good relations in the past with Dave Snyder, the RCCS director, and the process of getting a master plan in place for Vanier Nature Park has moved along at glacial speed. I think what we're dealing with here now is a crisis of an environmental nature, not one of a COVID pandemic nature.
Okay, well, thanks for your insight into that.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And we have Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thanks so much for the presentation, Karen, Bill, and Lindsay. I agree. This it sounds like it's an important matter, and it sounds like something which has some urgency to it. Our CAO is we don't, as a council, make decisions on the evening of the delegation, and this evening our CAO is not here. I'd certainly be interested in hearing his thinking on it. Just we haven't had that opportunity at this point. I wanted to ask you a question about kind of the third party who's involved here, which is the school district. And to just get your perspective on that. There was a letter that SD 71 wrote on June 4th, saying, among other things, that the educational component is not being discussed nor approved. But then your July 13th letter to us says this educational component of the pilot project is a partnership between CBN and SD 71. And I think there's good intentions on both sides here. It just sounds like there's a bit of a disconnect between what they're perceiving and what you're perceiving. And I was wondering if you've had any discussions with SD 71 to try and just sort of smooth the way a bit, because I think they sounded like they were uncomfortable with Comox Valley Nature sort of speaking on behalf of this. Lindsay, might you have an answer on that?
Yes. Are we talking about the educational component, Mayor Wells, or are we talking about the reallocation of properties?
Right now, we're talking about the actual education component and specifically the partnership with the school district.
Right. Okay. Well, in that regard, what we have is a chicken and egg situation here. Before we can secure the final approval of the educational staff within SD 71 for the educational component of this project, we need City Council's approval or the administration's approval to use and access Vanier Nature Park for this purpose. So that's where we're at. We have gone through an extensive consultation with the staff, educational staff at SD 71, and both sides are in agreement that this is a project that should proceed. But before it can be officially approved by SD 71 educational staff, we have to have the permission from either council or the administration to use this park for this purpose.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I mean, I guess you speak in the present tense saying this is a you give the impression of being in an active partnership with SD71 on this material, and that maybe perhaps the wrong message is being conveyed. Can I ask, was that meeting after June 4th when they wrote a letter to the City Council, which you forwarded to us as part of your materials?
Yes, we're not aware of the June 4th letter. I would love to know whose signature that originated under, but our discussions with SD71 on this have been up to and including June 4th, or before June 4th, but we haven't actually had any active communications with them past June on the proposal submission, because we've been waiting for council's approval. As you'll recall, our submission was May 6th to City Council. And so that really is the benchmark date for our consultations with SD71. And we did have some informal consultations through May as well, but really the project with SD71 has been on hold since the end of May, waiting for City Council's processing of our application for Vanier Nature Park and the educational component.
And one sec, Bill, just Kate McConnell wants to jump in, our acting CAO.
So Councillor Cohampton, I recognize that you referenced that the letter from the school district was sent with the delegation application package. And that was just so council had all of the information that had been submitted. So the original letter from the school district was part of your June 11th council correspondence package, but we were worried summer it may have gotten lost in the shuffle. So we pulled it out and provided it with the delegation. That way you're looking at all of the materials related to the presentation tonight at the same time.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That makes a great deal more sense, and thank you for shedding some light on your relationship with SD71.
And would I be able to just add specifically?
Yeah, Lindsay, go ahead.
We've been working with Serena Allison, just in kind of more informal, because we can't solidify anything at this point, but she's the district teacher for environmental and outdoor learning. And so she supports multiple schools for their environmental learning projects. And so she's been supportive of this project, and we've been working with her, and she's been kind of reaching out to Vanier, specific Vanier teachers, because they're in the closest proximity to that space. And we've had several teachers reach back saying that they'd be interested in in supporting this kind of program and having their students involved in some way, but we just can't, get too far before anything can really happen. So.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. That was actually extremely helpful. I know Serena, and I've worked with her a few times, and if she's on site and reaching out to staff there, it sounds like there's a much more productive relationship going on than might have been apparent initially. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, and Councillor McCullum.
Thank you. And yes, thanks for the presentation, everyone. It's been useful to have a better understanding of what the initiative is and what the hope is in the next year or so for restoration here. I had a similar question about the school district letter. It just seems as though there's a bit of a disconnect there. And I suppose my follow-up to what Councillor Cole-Hamilton has raised is whether or not you feel that there is a path forward where maybe these two things are parsed separately, and that it's not trying to bring in the education component with the proposal to the city. And I wonder if that is making things more complex and maybe adding an added level of bureaucracy to what could be something as simple as removing some invasive plants and working with the city on a plan for this park that deals with the loss of the Garry Oaks without trying to coordinate with the school district, especially after we received a letter that used words like concerns and that they're remember what else was highlighted in here, but basically they expressed concerns about city council receiving communication from your organization speaking for them. So I wonder if it would make more sense moving forward to, yeah, just deal with the one side of it, or if there's an issue with that I'm not seeing. I'm not sure who to direct that question at. Anyone in your group?
Yeah, so almost treating it like a second, potential second phase of the project that would be directly with SD 71, sort of after the first portion is established. Is that what you're?
Yeah, I mean, or just separately, I suppose, I mean, obviously there's lots that could happen in this space in conjunction with an outdoor program so close by, but yeah, whether it's possible to look at a plan for the area and just address the city with the concerns over invasive plants without, I know that there was a request earlier in the presentation around reversing our policy to not require council approval to have the school district access the park, but I'm not really aware of a policy that was changed in the first place. So it's maybe that's something that we'll have to ask staff to report back on at a future meeting. But yeah, I guess I'm just curious to know whether you could see a path forward where we're not trying to bring these two pieces together at the same time.
I think that's possible. I'm not sure if it's preferred, but I guess our one of our main intentions is for sure to make sure that the Garry Oaks are safe and that park is made what it can be. So if that was the best way forward to get that done, I guess we would consider it. This is all a bit of a surprise for us too. So Bill, do you have more thoughts about that?
Yeah, ask another question.
Bill, were you going to follow up?
Oh, yes. I think that it can be looked at as a separate subcomponent. It really, basically, it is already. We can proceed with the removal of invasive species. We can proceed with the restoration of the Garry Oaks with council's support and the administration's support quite separately. But I think it's really, this educational component is suddenly turned into a bit of a red herring. I'm totally blind-faced by the this June 4th letter, which we were not aware of, and I don't know where that came from. But we clearly do require still City Council's approval or the administration's approval for access of the park for educational purposes, whether it's with SD 71 or not. I mean, even if CVN is going to provide workshops in environmental education using the park, we still require the city's approval. So you can look at it in really two levels, one involving SD 71 and one not.
Okay, and you got a follow-up?
And I do have one other question that is separate from the school district issue, and that's around the Comox Valley Land Trust. Just reviewing our Parks and Rec master plan, in the description for the Banyan Nature Park, there is a mention that there is a covenant by the Comox Valley Land Trust. And it also mentions that there's perhaps ongoing initiatives, and I'm wondering if that's a group that your group is working in conjunction with, and if you're aware of, yeah, if those covenants impact or impede what your plan is in any way.
Yes, I'll respond to that. I actually sit on the board of the Comox Valley Land Trust as well, so I'm well aware of the connection between the two reports and the projects. In actual fact, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, in stating that there is a covenant ongoing or being processed for this Vanier Nature Park, that information is not correct. What has been completed and approved by the CVN back in 2016 and again updated in 2020 is a land use and management development plan for the SD 71's portion of Vanier Forest. So in other words, the 48% of the forest, which is not presently incorporated within Vanier Nature Park. Now that report has been circulated to city administration. Partly, I think it surfaced in the OCP review of the Greenways policy for Mission Hill and the Headquarters Road area. And I believe that there is a copy that is presently on file with the planning department of the city as well. But that report really is remaining tabled now at this stage with the CVLT for further consideration by the city of Courtenay. So what you have here is a report that goes back to 2016, was actually created in consultation with SD 71, and it is the report which actually outlines the additional parklands that are recommended to be ceded over to the city of Courtenay. And it is those areas that you will see in the last slide and in the last mention of the park boundary changes. So that CVLT report is in large part the origin for those park boundary change recommendations and the increased area for the Vanier Nature Park.
Great, thank you for that explanation.
Right, and Councillor Theos.
Thanks. Well, yeah, thanks for being here and for all the time and effort and guidance that you've put into seeing the restoration of the Garry Oaks. I know since I've been around, that's been a topic in many different circumstances to ensure their longevity and safety. But my question is in regards to the fact that there is a number of different organizations involved. There's a number of complexities involved, and of course the key is to ensure that the Garry Oaks do survive. But with your plan in place, my question is to you is in regards to do you see with your plan moving forward in the current form it's in, from your perspective, are there any potential negative impacts that could occur, or do you feel that this is the perfect plan and there's no concerns from your perspective?
Thank you, Matthias. Yes, there really are no negative impacts or downside to proceeding with this small pilot project partnership. What it simply does is deal with the minimum amount of restoration measure that is needed for the Gary Oaks in the immediate 3-year term. And that can go ahead without compromising in any way the Parks and Recreation Master Plan review process or the subsequent drafting and adoption of a management plan for Vanier Nature Park.
Thanks, Bill.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Theos. And you know, as was mentioned earlier, we generally don't make motions during a delegation, but this is certainly something that will most likely come back to us through unfinished business. And so, Bill, I just wanted to confirm sort of the 3 topics that I hear, and one of them somewhat newer, which is the actual boundary changes. So that's one thing. That sounded almost like has to precipitate the other things because that's going to affect where the work happens, and maybe I misheard that. And then the second is the works itself, and then the third is sort of the integration with SD 71 and the school. Does that sound right?
Yes, Mayor Wells, I think you've properly nailed it. It is really 3 issues. One is the restoration of the Gary Oaks. The second is allowing for invasive species removal through the administration. And then third is the educational component with SD 71.
Okay. And the boundaries really help frame exactly where those works will happen.
Yes, you're correct. They provide a background context. The pilot project would proceed while the city is negotiating with SD 71 on those boundary changes. It is not part of the pilot project. It is something that happens in tandem with it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for that clarity. And I see Councillor Frisch has his hand up, I believe, a second time.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And I had a similar question about the park boundary changes. In your report, you outlined that you had tried to work with SD 71. I guess it was in 2017 and in 2020, and it sounds like maybe you weren't getting a lot of traction with them. How's that going right now?
Excellently. The last communications we've had with the administration of SD 71 have said that they intend to initiate the negotiation process or discussion process with the city of Courtenay in the fall of this year. And they've had 2 previous meetings with your city staff, with the parks manager about this boundaries matter. And their consultant, Current Environmental, is currently working on the remediation plans for those wetland areas, which would be handed over to the city in 2022. And I think all sides recognize that it's going to be a slow and long process. It certainly will extend well into 2022, and it will probably involve 3 different city departments, planning, public works services, and RCCS. So it's going to involve a considerable amount of the staff's resource time.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it's all news to me, so it sounds great. I guess at this point, it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to speak for the rest of council, but it sounds like a really great project, something like we'd want to be a part of. So I think we're going to need to reach out to our staff and find out what their perspective is on this, because obviously we don't make decisions in a vacuum. So I think we're going to need to learn a little bit more about it. And when this comes back to us at a future meeting, I'd be happy to ask for that report to see where we're at with our with our capacity issues and to see if we can help out with this project, because it is really interesting to me, and I'm glad you brought it to us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. And, you know, as we've been working through this project and reaching out to actual people in parks, we've just found them to be amazing, helpful, and we really have been on the same page with our goals and our methodology. So that's been very satisfying and very positive. So thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for those comments. And I know, you know, we have amazing staff, and again, they'll be coming forward with some information, I think, to help us understand the process and where the bottlenecks are happening, et cetera. And Bill, I do appreciate you taking my call randomly on you know, some night that I was on a ferry and kind of going over the logistics of the project. But like I said, we'll continue the conversation, I'm sure. And we've had a very fulsome conversation today. And I think we've gotten a much more clarity on exactly your perspective on the project. So now it's just really how do we move forward, and what are the issues at hand. So with that, if there's no further questions or comments, and if council is everybody, nobody's opposed to receipt, I'm assuming, and so I will receive this unanimously. And again, thanks very much, Bill and Lindsay and Karen, for your time tonight.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Thank you as well.
Thank you all.
All right, and it's your choice. You can keep watching, but you can go watch it on YouTube if you want as well. So,
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Good night.
With that said, moving on to staff reports. We do have the Vancouver Island Health Authority request for the Florence Filberg Center. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just going to go ahead and move option 1. That based on the July 19th, 2021 staff report, Vancouver Island Health Authority requests to use the Florence Filberg Center for Community Immunization Clinic. Council authorized staff to enter into a license of occupation agreement between the Vancouver Island Health Authority and the city for the use of the Florence Filberg Center upper floor for the purpose of operating a community COVID-19 immunization clinic, and that staff be directed to not enforce the rental fee as outlined in the recreational facility rental and user fee bylaw number 1673, 1992, and instead set a unique one-time rental rate equivalent to the revenue received in 2019 for the same period for the upper floor of the Florence Filberg Center for the license term, and that the mayor and an officer of the city be authorized to execute all documentation relating to the license of occupation agreement.
Second that.
Excellent. Thanks for that. That's been moved in second, and I will pass it over to Kate. Now, Kate, I refer to you as our acting CAO, but I'm not. Is that accurate?
For this week, it is.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we have the Director of Parks, Recreation, Culture, Community Services, Susie Saunders, to present the report.
Great, thank you, and through the CAO to Mayor and Council. The purpose of the report, as mentioned, is for Council to consider the request of Vancouver Island Health Authority to ask the City of Courtenay to enter into a license of occupation and waive facility rental fees for the operation of a COVID-19 community immunization clinic at the Florence Filberg Center. As described in the report, VIA had to unexpectedly end its use of Glacier Gardens Arena during the recent heat wave. So reached out to Courtenay staff on June 30th to discuss relocation of the immunization clinic. At that time, it was a temporary relocation. Staff approved the request, and we were able to support VIHA in opening on July 1st. Since that time, VIHA has requested to extend their use of the space and stay in the Florence Filberg until September 14th, 2021. Staff have confirmed that the facility can be made available for this purpose, and for this time period, we're able to relocate a few rentals to other buildings. As such, Council is asked to approve the entering into a license of occupation with VIHA to facilitate their use of the Florence Filberg Center, and it would be from June 30th until September 14th, 2021. In our discussions with VIHA, they also indicated they typically have not paid rental fees to operate immunization clinics, or in cases where they have paid, it's been a very minimal amount. However, due to us now being in phase 3 of BC's restart plan, the Florence Filberg is now able to accept larger events and rentals. So as such, VIHA is willing and has agreed to pay the City of Courtenay a fee equivalent to our potential lost revenue. So we looked at 2019's rental revenue for the same time period, and VIHA has agreed to pay that amount of lost revenue. The goal of all of their agreements with the facilities they've used for immunization clinics is to make sure that the operator of that building remains whole for the use of that clinic, or sorry, for the use of the facility. So additionally, the license also outlines that VIHA will reimburse the city for all direct costs associated with hosting the clinic, so cleaning costs and utilities, that type of thing. And so we're asking council to approve the waiving of rental fees as outlined in the recreation facility and rental user fee bylaw, and set a unique one-time rental fee equivalent to the revenue we received in 2019 for the same time period. This is a very unique circumstance, and looking for council support to support VIHA in its efforts to continue providing community-based accessible immunization clinics in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And I can answer any questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. And I'm just going to make sure I got all my things open here. And I don't see any questions or comments here. The motion did have a lot of information in it. And I think it is one of these things, you know, it's almost housekeeping at this point, because they, you know, those immunization clinics have started already. And I think really what I want to acknowledge is just how quickly staff are able to react and make this happen in a time when keeping those vaccinations happening as quickly as possible is absolutely critical. So I know I did have a meeting with our medical health officer, and she commented on the same, that, you know, obviously there were some hiccups, but those hiccups tended to be more technical, computer web-based stuff. But as far as the people were concerned, everything went unbelievably smoothly. So really want to thank staff for stepping up and making this happen. And with that said, I still don't see any else that wants to talk. So we'll maybe just call the vote. All those in favor? And that looks unanimous. So thanks so much, Susie, for the report, and again, kudos to the staff for getting that done so quickly.
Mayor, may I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Hasn't been a huge issue, but Ms. O'Connell is really difficult to hear. She had a really great explanation that Councillor Cole Hamilton loved. I wish I had heard it a while back. And recently it hasn't mattered because I think she just introduced Ms. Saunders, but it's really difficult to hear. So I just wanted to let her know that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's always an issue, and she is the furthest from our big microphone here. So she's moving right now, and then we'll make sure that we're using our outside voices as much as possible. And
thanks so much.
Thanks for bringing it up, Councillor Fresh. I do appreciate it. All right. So with that, we have zoning amendment bylaw 3031. If somebody would like to, we got Councillor McCollum.
I'll move that based on today's staff report, zoning amendment bylaw 3031 to allow for secondary suite at 815 Williams Road. Council approve option 1 and proceed to first and second readings of zoning amendment bylaw number 3031 2021, and that council considers zoning amendment bylaw number 3031 2021 consistent with the city's official community plan, and that council waives the requirement to hold a public hearing with respect to zoning amendment bylaw number 3031 2020 pursuant to section 4672 of the Local Government Act, and direct staff to give notice of the waiver of the public hearing pursuant to section 467 of the Local Government Act in advance of consideration of the third reading of the bylaw.
Second that.
All right, that's been seconded. Excellent. And I'll pass it over to Kate O'Connell.
Thank you, Your Worship. For you, we've got Matthew Fitzgerald from the Development Services Department to present on the report this evening.
Thank you. Through the acting CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is a rezoning proposal to add a secondary suite to an existing house at 815 Williams Road. The suite complies with all zoning parameters such as size and on-site parking. The applicant did hold a public information meeting in support of this proposal with 6 comments received. 4 were in support and 2 were opposed. Staff are recommending that council waives the public hearing for this proposal. In doing so, the next step would then be that staff advertise the public hearing being waived and that any further comments are provided to council prior to considering 3rd reading. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. And I'm looking around and I don't see any hands going up. But I know I did talk to staff just a little bit about this, and it doesn't sound like there is any issues with the secondary suite. So with that, I'll just poll council and all those in favor. And any opposed, and that's unanimous. Excellent. All right. Thanks very much. It's a little, I'm keeping my eyes everywhere. I have to be like a little fly and look up at the screen and over there. So that's great. Next, we have engineering services, 6th Street multi-use transportation bridge.
I can move this one if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I will move that based on the July 19th staff report entitled 6th Street Multi-Use Active Transportation Bridge Funding Reallocation. Council approve option 1 and direct staff to reallocate $300,000 of community gas tax funds from the Ryan Road Sidewalk Sandwick to Braidwood Project Fund to the 6th Street Bridge Project Fund in 2021.
Second.
All right, that's been first and seconded. I'll pass it over to Acting CAO Kate O'Connell.
Thank you, Your Worship. For you, we've got the Director of Engineering, Chris Davidson, here to present the report and answer any questions, Councilman.
Thank you, Kate. Through the Acting CAO to Mayor and Council. Purpose of this staff report is to request a budget reallocation of $300,000 in project funding to complete detailed design for the 6th Street multi-use active transportation bridge. As per recently completed procurement for consulting services, the detailed design and related activities are more expensive than previously estimated, while the contract administration is less expensive. Completing detailed design for the bridge will position the project to apply for shovel-ready grant opportunities should they become available. It is proposed that the $300,000 be reallocated from the Ryan Road Sidewalk Sandwick to Braidwood project. The Ryan Road Sidewalk project is not expected to be impacted by this budget reallocation, and construction is tentatively planned for 2022. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Councillor Theos.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris, for the update. My question is in regards to the 300,000 may not affect the Braidwood project, but what other projects do we have that $300,000 could have been useful for, seeing that we have put on hold a number of other projects in the last little while? Thank you very much for taking that question.
Thank you for the question. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, there are a number of projects that the city is actively working on. My understanding is that quite a few of them are adequately funded. I'm at a bit of a loss as to describe what else this money could have been used for besides this project. Maybe I'll defer this back to the acting CAO, Kate O'Connell, to provide comment.
Thank you, Councilor Theos, for your question. Essentially, when the money is being reallocated, it's just looking at the impacts on currently planned projects. So staff wouldn't have undertaken an evaluation as far as what that could be had it been treated as if it was surplus. So essentially, the project or the design phase as it is, if that's something that council is interested in, recognizing the real costs of undertaking that design phase, this money would be required to undertake that. Should council wish to consider a different priority or something at this time, that is something that could be considered as well. But this wasn't an evaluation process as far as what priority got funding over what. It wasn't treated as surplus fund, but more of a reallocation based on an already approved council priority for 2020.
Thank you, Kate.
All right, and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Chris, for the report. Yeah, I guess I'm just curious about this budget reallocation and just the fact that it's so much different than what we had originally budgeted, and if there's been a change to you know, I don't know, the scope of what we're looking for, just it would be useful to understand why our budgeted amount was out by such an order of magnitude. It just worries me that going forward, that our other estimates may not be as close as we were thinking as well. And I'm just wondering if there's other concerns around what we're imagining the cost impacts of this project to be, or if this was, I don't know, not indicative of a bigger problem, I suppose.
Excellent question. Thank you. Through acting CAO to mayor and council, no, I wouldn't say indicative of a larger problem, more of an issue of work phasing and work planning. So we should have budgeted more money for this year to facilitate detailed design. The overall consulting fees for this project have stayed fairly similar. So after procurement, overall consulting fees, including detailed design and construction services, have increased by about $75,000 or 14%. Not extreme, I would say. Just the case that we want to move detailed design along a little faster, so we're hoping to get some of the funds up front just so we can do so.
That's great. That's very reassuring. I just had one other quick question too. I know that I've seen some press releases around the BCA Active Transportation Grants, and that some design work is now qualifies, and just wanted to know if this piece of this project would qualify for any of that design grant money, and if that's been looked at.
It has been looked at. Strategically, we decided not to pursue this. We're holding out for hopefully a much larger grant for either portions of detailed design, but ideally construction. So we don't want to apply for a smaller grant and get a small portion of the project covered. We really do want to hold out for a larger grant for this one. So that's been the approach taken. Please don't think that it's been wasted grant opportunities. There are other active transportation grant projects that the city has considered, and I believe one of them is on the agenda for tonight too.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that.
Excellent. And just to go back a little bit, actually for Councillor Frisch, I just saw you leaning in a bit. Are you okay to hear Kate when she's speaking?
Yep. You know what? If I just get real close and turn up the volume, it's all good.
There you go. There you
Way
go.
better than before.
Okay, excellent. That's great. And I see you have your hand up as well. So maybe I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, thanks. So I had some similar questions. It sounds like it's more of a timing issue, and maybe I should just be really glad that staff are pushing ahead so strongly with it. Is that sort of the case?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through acting CAO to mayor and council, absolutely, it's a timing issue. And yes, we are pushing this as hard as we can. We previously presented a fairly ambitious schedule, and we're still endeavoring to meet that schedule.
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say the only question in schedule would be timing for grant opportunities, but unfortunately that's going to be out of our control.
Yeah, and it sounds like the money, what you're saying is that the $300,000 that we're reallocating will be saved on this project in next year, and so will then be sort of available for our sidewalk project, which we're also, of course, fairly keen on at some point.
Yes, I want to be careful with language. Yes, it'll be $300,000 we'll be using. We won't be using next year for the 6th Street Bridge project. So it's just a case of moving the money up by a year, even though financially speaking, it's not that simplistic.
Okay, fair enough. I understand that. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor Theos.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, I think that in a circumstance where we're looking at coming out of such difficult times, and there's a long bumpy road ahead of us. And from my perspective, if we're saying we're going to save $300,000 next year, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think that's maybe wishful thinking from my perspective. So I'm quite concerned about this cost that we're looking at now $450,000 for a design, and it puts I believe that to me puts a very different perspective in this on this project, where people are already telling me how concerned they are about this project moving forward. So I am going to be backing off on this request.
All right, thanks, Councillor Theos. And yeah, so thanks very much for the report today. And again, I think it is somewhat, it's been a council priority. Obviously, that it got caught that, we weren't going to be ready for things. But when I was speaking with our MP, Gord Johns, on Friday and kind of went over the priorities for the city at this point in time, where he thought he might be able to pull some leverage is on that grant funding side of things from the federal side. And so I think it is serendipitous that, we're having these conversations, and that we're as shovel ready as possible to make sure that that particular project gets as much federal and provincial funding as possible. So really want to thank everybody for making sure this didn't fall off the side of the desk, as sometimes things do during COVID and with all the projects we have going on. So and the fact that we are just reallocating funds without actually impacting anything is truly a win-win. So there's no real drawback whatsoever. So again, thanks very much to staff for making sure, and you can probably guess how I'm going to vote. But having said that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And any opposed? And Councillor Theos is opposed. All right. And next we have the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant application. So,
yeah,
Councillor, sorry, let me back to the microphone here. Yep.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I was going to move option 1, that council direct staff to submit an application for funding, grant funding for the Dingwall Stairs project through the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant, and the council supports the project and commits to any associated ineligible costs and cost overruns.
Excellent. Let's move second to our acting CAO, Kate O'Connell.
Thank you, Worship and Council. We've got the Director of Public Works Services, Kyle Shaw, here to present the report and answer any questions you may have.
Yes, thank you. Through the acting CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present staff report BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant application for the Dingwall Stairs. It seems kind of poetic now to speak about the active transportation application, or the grant for that matter. The conversation seems to be pointed very well in this direction. And I might owe Chris a thank you for not taking up all of the applications with the Sixth Street Bridge that have provided an opportunity for Public Works to come forward with this one. But the purpose of this report is to request Council's approval for the application of the grant funding through the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program. As you are aware, in June of 2021, the province again announced the opening of the BC Active Transportation Grant Program. This program provides cost share opportunities, network planning, and infrastructure implementation. Funding for these programs has supported the development and construction of active transportation infrastructure for all ages and abilities. As part of that application requirement, the city requires council to support the application itself, but also that of the funding, and should the grant be awarded. So with that, staff are recommending it is still a strategic priority and hasn't been yet seen a successful application thus far this year. With that, I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
Excellent. Thank you. And your audio did cut out just a little bit there. You sounded like you're using your outside voice, and it just might be something with your microphone. So you may get a question based on whatever we missed, but with great anticipation, I'll pass it over to any of the councillors that might have any questions or comments, starting with Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the report, Kyle. Yeah, just question around timing and timelines. Should this application be successful, is it reasonable to expect that this work will be done in this fiscal, or is this looking ahead to 2022?
Yes, thank you for that question. Through the acting CAO to Mayor and Council, The application process would be this year with a construction window of 2022.
Makes sense. Thanks for that clarification.
All right, and Councillor Theos.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor. So with the potential grant of the 50%, that leaves us with a cost of $208,000, $207,800. I was just interested in knowing, it says plus the detailed design. What are we estimating that detailed design to be costing us, please?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Theos. Through the acting CAO to Mayor and Council. As I review my cost estimates, my detailed design is coming out to about $68,000 for the design itself.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Theos. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Shaw for pushing ahead with this project. I think, as outlined in the staff report, it is an exceptionally important corridor. I used to use this myself 20 years ago when I lived in the area, and I know it'll be a real asset for that community. It'll help keep them stay active, and it will probably also help a lot of people avoid quite a few car trips, which I think is really important. So I know we have a lot on the go, and yeah, I wish the best of luck with the grant opportunity.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor McCollum. There we go.
Thanks. Yeah, another question around this project just occurred to me after I asked my earlier question. If I'm not mistaken, there is a fairly substantial rezoning application that's going in for that undeveloped area, kind of right beside where these stairs are expected to land. And I'm wondering if much thought's been given to whether or not we will be able to seek any funding or support from the developer, because I mean, it's a pretty big amenity for the houses that are expected to go in that area.
Yes, thank you for that question. Through the acting CAO to Mayor and Council, maybe Ian could speak to that. I know that there has been consideration, and maybe I'll just I'll preclude that with respect to that rezoning application. That is a time in which the city can ask for support financially for amenities, and you are correct that it is directly adjacent to that, but proportional of that nature for that sense. It still shouldn't be moving forward with the grant application, knowing full well that it is a priority and there is allocation for that project in this fiscal, with a project expected completion of next year. But you are correct in that assumption, and staff have considered that through conversation.
Yeah, maybe just to quickly add to that, anytime there's a development proposal adjacent to City Works, whether that's existing infrastructure that needs updating or new projects, we always try to work with the developer, whether that's through amenity contributions or just our regular offsite works and services. In this instance, to my understanding, and I haven't seen the project in a bit, they're working within existing zoning, or trying their best to. The property is currently zoned for single family and duplex type development. So they are working through that process. I don't, to be honest, know exactly where that is in the system. Matt can, I see he's just turned on, he can let us know a bit better, but we always do try when we have development proposals to work with the developer on improvements.
Yeah, thanks. Just to add to that, or provide further clarity, so that, yeah, they are planning within the existing zoning. Right now, they're just in the subdivision process for one of the first phases. That's where it's at.
All right, thanks very much. And Councillor, I think that's it. Excellent. Sorry, I was looking at your lights.
Yeah, I turned it off.
Yep.
Prematurely. Thanks.
No, it's all good. Fantastic. So, so that being said, I guess the next thing is to call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And I see none opposed. That's unanimous. Thanks very much. And that brings us to reports from council members. And we didn't talk anything. You were somewhere this morning. I don't know if you want to mention that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, actually, I would like to. This morning, it was a pleasure to raise the pride flag over City Hall, and it was a delight to see representatives of the Pride Society here, and to be proudly displaying that from City Hall's flagpole. And discussion of whether we need an extra flagpole is pending. We had to take down the British Columbia flag to do that, and no disrespect to the province. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. Councillor Frisch.
No, I'm fine. Thanks very much.
And I'll just acknowledge Councillor Frisch was at the flag raising this morning with his son Cody. So I really appreciate you being there. And I should actually, and I've forgotten her name now, but
Daisy.
Daisy was there as well. So Councillor Cole Hamilton's dog. So that was fantastic. Councillor Theos, anything?
I'm all good. Thanks for asking.
Perfect. And I think that just leaves myself. There was a flag raising, which was a great ceremony and a great conversations. I think that that were had afterwards and during on really how to integrate some of the principles of that and how the city can be potentially involved, or even have them come as a delegation to explain, because they're really working in that advocacy role. So it was a really good conversation. Another thing that happened last Tuesday was I did attend the CBRD meetings, and it was good. But one of the delegations there was the Comox Youth Climate Council that talked about the Green New Deal and just really how articulate it was. It was a very, I'd say, a very lengthy document. And really the only thing missing out of the document that I thought was probably pretty useful was their contact information. So it had all the things to do. But I think one of the big conversations was that follow-up and keeping that conversation going. But it sounds like they're just giving her all they got, and it's great to see the youth really stepping up and taking ownership on these things and providing real solutions that can be applied at various levels of government. And then lastly, on Friday night, I was at the lacrosse opening ceremonies and banner raising. So this is probably one of the first tournaments that has happened in the Comox Valley in a long time, certainly the first time for the lacrosse in, I believe, a couple of years. And it was great to see all the youth out and the parents supporting them and things kind of getting back to normal. So I'd just like to mention that. And that's all I have. So that being said, we do have an in-camera meeting if someone would like to move that. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, Mayor, I'll move that a special in-camera meeting closed to the public will be held July 19th, 2021 at the conclusion of the regular council meeting pursuant to the following subsection of the community charter, 91C, labor relations or other employee relations.
Second.
That's been seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Everyone's in favor, so that's unanimous. Thanks very much. And we'll move on to our bylaws.
Mayor, I'm happy to move that zoning amendment bylaw number 3031/2021 for 815 Williams Road passed first and second readings.
All right, that's been seconded by Councillor McCollum. Thanks very much. We've had a brief conversation around this. Staff spoke to it, and we do have Councillor Theos.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Yeah, there was as was noted earlier, that there was a couple members of the neighborhood that were opposed and sent letters in. And just to acknowledge that there was concerns from people in the neighborhood of increased traffic and parking, etc. And it is a concern that with that area having the casino, having a potential a new significant hotel and the postal office and a few other and also other patio home residentials in that area. It is a growing little neighborhood, and traffic and other concerns of sidewalks are very valid. And we will be hopefully working towards some solutions in that regard to make that area of Williams and Back Road more safe, or as safe as possible for the people that live in that area.
All right, thanks, Councillor Theos. And Matt Fitzgerald, I just noticed you were unmuted, but did you have a comment or was it just accidental?
No, thanks. No comment.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, with that, thanks, Councillor Theos, for your comments. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is unanimous. Only one thing left.
Move adjournment.
All those in favor? Any opposed?